You wake up exhausted, not from lack of sleep, but from carrying the invisible weight of your own expectations. You check off to-do lists, show up for everyone else, and maybe even achieve some measure of success. Yet deep down, you feel like you're drowning in your own mind. There's this constant loop of self-criticism, second-guessing and emotional burnout that no one sees. You wonder why you're stuck, why joy slips through your fingers, why nothing ever feels quite enough. And here's the hard truth. What if the person hurting you the most is you? Not because you want to suffer, but because somewhere along the way you learn to confuse survival with self-sacrifice. The real danger isn't always toxic people out there. It's the silent ways we betray ourselves every single day. Through perfectionism disguised as discipline, people-pleasing masked as kindness, overthinking paraded as being responsible. These patterns are subtle. They don't scream, they whisper, but they shape your life all the same. In this video, we're going to uncover 7 powerful signs that you might be toxic to yourself. They might be uncomfortable to hear, but once you see them, you'll finally have the power to break free. Because awareness is the first act of self-respect. Let's dive in. What self-toxicity really means. When we hear the word toxic, we often think of difficult people, manipulators, narcissists, or energy vampires who drain our peace. But what happens when the toxicity doesn't come from the outside? What if it lives quietly within you, hidden beneath your habits, thoughts, and the way you speak to yourself? Being toxic to yourself isn't about self-hate or conscious cruelty. It's not something you choose, it's something you learn. Most self-toxicity is subtle, unconscious, and deeply conditioned. It shows up as perfectionism that keeps you burned out, people-pleasing that erases your needs, overthinking that paralyzes your peace, and self-talk so harsh it would devastate anyone else if said aloud. These patterns often form in childhood or through trauma, where you were taught, directly or indirectly, that love is earned, that mistakes make you unworthy, or that your emotions are too much. You internalize those messages and begin to police your own joy, silence your own needs, and minimize your own potential, all in the name of being good enough. Unlike external toxicity, which is usually easier to identify and escape, internal toxicity is trickier because it wears the mask of responsibility, self-discipline, and humility. It convinces you that you're just being realistic when you kill your own dreams. It tells you you're being considerate when you abandon your boundaries. And over time, it becomes the lens through which you experience life. But here's the good news. Once you see it, you don't have to keep living in it. Awareness is not only the first step to healing, it is healing. Because once you understand that these toxic patterns were learned, you can begin the work of unlearning. You can start to replace self-judgment with self-compassion, fear with curiosity, and punishment with patience. Recognizing your own toxic patterns isn't about shame, it's about liberation. It's a chance to choose yourself, to treat yourself with the love and care you've so freely given to others. Healing starts the moment you realize that you deserve to feel safe within your own mind. And from there, everything begins to change. Number 1, you constantly criticize yourself. One of the clearest signs that you may be toxic to yourself is the voice inside your head. The one that never seems to shut up, never gives you a break, and never feels satisfied, no matter how much you do. This is the voice of your inner critic, and it's far more common and damaging than most people realize. It shows up in the smallest moments. You forget something and immediately think, "I'm such an idiot." You try something new and stumble, and the first reaction is, "I should have known better." Even when you do well, your mind whispers, "It's not enough. I could have done more." This constant self-criticism doesn't just drain your energy, it slowly rewires your sense of self. Over time, you begin to believe that your worth is tied to flawless performance, constant improvement, or never making mistakes. And when you inevitably fall short, as all humans do, it reinforces the toxic loop. More shame, more self-punishment, more distance from your own humanity. This internal voice doesn't come from nowhere. Most often, it has roots in your past, perhaps a childhood marked by unrealistic expectations, conditional praise, or environments where love was earned, not given freely. Maybe you grew up being told to be better, do more, or stop crying, and you learned to survive by becoming your own harshest judge. Or perhaps your inner critic formed as a defense mechanism, a way to stay ahead of failure or rejection by being hypervigilant. Either way, that voice became familiar. It became your standard, even when it hurt. But here's something essential to understand. That voice is not you. It's a part of you that learned to protect you the only way it knew how. And now, as an adult, you have the power to meet it with something radically different: compassion. One simple but powerful practice is to name your inner critic. Give it a character. Maybe it's the drill sergeant, the perfectionist, or even a cartoon character, something that helps you gain distance from its voice. When it pipes up, instead of blindly believing it, try responding, "Thank you, but I don't need that right now." Over time, this builds awareness and gives you choice. Another powerful strategy is reparenting, speaking to yourself the way a healthy, loving parent would. If a child came to you feeling defeated, you wouldn't berate them. You'd listen. You'd affirm their effort. You'd remind them that mistakes are part of growth. That's exactly the energy you need to start bringing inward. Being kind to yourself isn't weakness. It's the foundation of resilience. Self-compassion doesn't mean lowering your standards. It means creating the safety and support that allows you to grow without fear. So the next time you hear that inner voice say, "You're not good enough," pause. Ask, who taught me that? And is it actually true? Because more often than not, that voice is echoing someone else's fear, not your truth. And the moment you stop criticizing yourself like an enemy and start treating yourself like an ally, your entire inner world begins to shift. That's when healing begins. Number 2, you abandon your own needs. Another deep sign of self-toxicity is the quiet, chronic habit of abandoning your own needs for the comfort or convenience of others. It often begins innocently enough, a favor here, a sacrifice there. But over time, it becomes a way of being, saying yes when you desperately want to say no, showing up for others while slowly disappearing from your own life. Giving and giving until there's nothing left for yourself. You may not even recognize it as self-neglect, because it's so often praised in society. People call you reliable, selfless, dependable, but inside you feel depleted. You live on emotional fumes, and deep down there's a growing bitterness that you're not allowed to express because you've taught everyone, including yourself, that your needs come last. This pattern of people-pleasing isn't just about being nice, it's about survival. Many of us learned early on that love was conditional, that we were valued for what we did, not for who we were. Maybe you had a parent who only praised you when you were helpful or quiet. Or perhaps you were taught that speaking up was selfish, that making others uncomfortable was a betrayal. So you learned to make yourself smaller. You trained yourself to tune out your own hunger, your fatigue, your dreams, because the approval of others felt safer than the risk of being fully seen. But in doing so, you created a life where your worth is measured by your usefulness, and that's a cage. The cost of abandoning your needs isn't just emotional exhaustion, it's the erosion of identity. You start forgetting what you actually like, what you believe in, what rest feels like. You may even feel guilty when you finally do take time for yourself. That guilt is a signal. It means you've mistaken self-sacrifice for love. It means your boundaries have been eroded for so long that honoring them now feels wrong. But here's the truth. Your needs are not a burden. They are not optional. They are your responsibility. And honoring them is not selfish. It's sacred. I remember someone once telling a story about how they finally realized the cost of this behavior. She was the go-to person in everyone's life, always available, always fixing, always saying yes. Then one day she had a breakdown. No one noticed, because she had trained the world to believe she was unshakable. That day she decided to reclaim her boundaries. It wasn't easy. People got upset. Some relationships changed. But slowly she built a new rhythm, one where she mattered to herself. And from that space, the love she gave became fuller, cleaner, no longer laced with resentment. You don't have to wait for a breakdown to reclaim your voice. It starts with one boundary, one no that protects your peace, one moment where you ask yourself, what do I need right now? And then actually honor the answer. Self-respect begins where self-abandonment ends. You deserve to live a life where you are not just useful, but whole. Number 3, you stay in cycles that hurt you. There's a particular kind of self-toxicity that doesn't always look dramatic on the outside. It's the quiet, painful pattern of staying in places that continuously hurt you. Toxic relationships that drain your spirit. Jobs that rob you of meaning. Habits that slowly chip away at your self-worth. You stay, not because they make you happy, but because they feel familiar. There's a strange comfort in what you already know, even if it's painful. And so you wake up each day walking in circles, hoping for something to change, but too afraid to make the change yourself. You convince yourself it's not that bad, that maybe you're overreacting, or that things might improve if you just hold on a little longer. But deep down, you know you're betraying your own peace. This is where trauma bonds come into play. The emotional ties that keep you loyal to pain. Because pain was your earliest language of love. If chaos was normalized in your upbringing, if inconsistency felt like attention, if suffering felt like proof of worth, then of course you'd struggle to leave something just because it hurts. It doesn't feel wrong. It feels familiar. And familiarity is powerful. You may even feel addicted to the emotional highs and lows, the drama, the constant push and pull. That's emotional addiction. When your nervous system becomes so used to stress, anxiety, or dysfunction, that peace actually feels threatening. So instead of moving towards something healthier, you unconsciously gravitate back to what breaks you, because it's what you know how to survive. But the real reason many people stay stuck isn't just trauma. It's fear. Fear of the unknown, fear of loneliness, fear of regret, fear of failing somewhere new. The mind says, better the devil you know than the one you don't. But here's the truth that can break that cycle. Staying in a space that wounds you is not loyalty, it's self-abandonment. And the longer you stay, the deeper the pattern roots into your identity. You begin to believe that suffering is your destiny, that happiness is something reserved for other people. But it's not. You are not stuck because of your circumstances. You're stuck because of the story you keep telling yourself about who you are and what you deserve. There's a mindset shift that can liberate you. The pain you know is not more trustworthy than the peace you haven't met yet. You don't have to have it all figured out to walk away. You just have to believe that peace is possible and that you are worthy of experiencing it. You may feel fear. That's okay. Let it walk beside you. But don't let it decide your future. You owe it to yourself to choose healing over habit. It might be uncomfortable at first. It might even be lonely. But over time, you'll realize that what felt like losing something was actually finding yourself again. And that's a cycle worth staying in. Number 4, you fear success or happiness. One of the most hidden yet powerful signs that you're being toxic to yourself is when you fear the very things you claim to want. Success, happiness, love, peace. This shows up as self-sabotage, the strange compulsion to ruin something good right when it starts to feel safe. You get the job offer and suddenly doubt if you're good enough. You meet someone kind and start questioning their intentions. You finally feel joy and then brace for disaster. It's not because you're weak. It's because part of you believes you don't deserve the good. Deep down, your self-image doesn't match the life you're stepping into. And when who you're becoming threatens the story you've lived with for so long, your subconscious hits the brakes. That's not failure, it's fear dressed in protection. Gay Hendricks, in his book, The Big Leap, calls this the upper limit problem. Every person has a hidden internal thermostat for how much happiness, love, or success they feel is safe to have. When they start to exceed that limit, they unconsciously create problems to bring themselves back down. This can look like picking fights when things are going well, procrastinating before a big opportunity, or pushing people away the moment you start to feel seen. The logic is twisted but common. If I don't let myself enjoy this, I can't lose it. Or worse, if I sabotage it first, at least I'm in control of the fall. That fear doesn't mean something's wrong with you. It usually comes from past experiences where joy was followed by pain. So now joy itself feels dangerous. It's important to understand that for many people, feeling good feels like a risk, especially if you were raised in environments where peace was temporary, or love came with conditions, or success meant more pressure. You might associate happiness with a pending crash. So you reject the good not because you want to suffer, but because suffering is familiar. It feels predictable, safe, But if you always assume the worst when things go right, you'll never let yourself fully live. You'll stay trapped in a loop of almost happiness, never quite letting it in. The shift starts with practicing joy without needing a justification. Let yourself feel good just because. Not because you worked for it, not because it's earned, but because it's your birthright. Try this when something beautiful happens. Pause and breathe it in. Say to yourself, it's safe to feel good. I'm allowed to enjoy this. Notice any tension that arises and stay with it. Over time, your nervous system will start to trust safety. Your body will stop flinching in moments of calm, and your mind will stop inventing storms to match your old self-image. To be clear, this isn't about blind positivity or ignoring real challenges. It's about expanding your capacity for good things, stretching your comfort zone to include peace, not just pain. When you stop expecting the worst, you start receiving the best with open hands. And when you no longer believe joy has to be punished, you finally allow yourself to live the life you've been chasing from a place of worth, not fear. That's not just healing, that's freedom. Number 5. You numb instead of feel. One of the most overlooked signs of self-toxicity is the constant need to numb instead of feel. We don't always recognize it as harmful, because numbing can look deceptively harmless, even productive. You stay up late, binge watching shows, scroll endlessly through social media. Bury yourself in work, reach for food you're not really hungry for, or have a few drinks to take the edge off. It's not that any of these things are bad in moderation. It's the why behind them. When you're constantly reaching for distractions, it's often not because you're lazy or unfocused. It's because you're trying not to feel something. And that's when numbing becomes a survival strategy. You avoid your emotions because they feel too heavy, too chaotic, or too unfamiliar. But in doing so, you also avoid healing, growth, and connection. Emotional avoidance is often rooted in the belief that feelings are dangerous. Maybe you were raised to believe that crying is weak, that anger is wrong, or that talking about your pain is complaining. So instead of letting emotions move through you, you push them down, cover them up, or mute them with noise. But the truth is, numbing doesn't just block pain, it blocks everything. You can't selectively numb. When you dull the hard emotions, you also dull joy, clarity, creativity, and intimacy. You end up feeling foggy, disconnected, and empty, not because you're broken, but because you've lost touch with what's alive inside you. Over time, this creates a life where you're surviving, but not really living. Here's the shift. Emotions are not enemies, they are messengers. They're not here to punish you, they're here to inform you. Every emotion carries data. Sadness signals loss. Anger points to violation. Fear reveals vulnerability. Joy highlights alignment. When you stop judging your emotions and start listening to them, you build self-trust. You stop running from yourself, and you begin to meet life as it is, not through layers of avoidance. It may feel overwhelming at first, but that's only because your body has been holding back a tide for so long. When you allow yourself to feel, even for a moment, you make space for release. And in that release, healing begins. One gentle way to start reconnecting with your emotional world is through a simple body scan. Close your eyes, breathe deeply, and move your awareness slowly from head to toe. Ask yourself, what am I feeling right now? And not just in your thoughts, but in your body. Tight chest, heavy stomach, clenched jaw, these are emotional clues. Another practice is journaling, giving yourself 5 minutes to write uncensored, just naming what's present. Or try the name it to tame it method. When an emotion surfaces, say to yourself, I'm feeling anxious, or there's sadness here. This simple act of acknowledgement can reduce the emotion's intensity and help your nervous system regulate. The goal isn't to dwell in emotion, but to stop abandoning yourself in the moments when you need the most care. When you numb, you disconnect. When you feel, you reconnect with yourself, with others, with life. You deserve to live fully, and that includes learning how to be with everything you feel. You are not too much. Your emotions are not a problem to fix. They are a path back home to yourself. Number 6. You don't trust yourself. One of the most damaging yet quiet ways we become toxic to ourselves is by constantly doubting our own inner voice. When you don't trust yourself, it shows up in chronic indecision, agonizing over simple choices, asking 10 people for advice, then still feeling unsure. It looks like second-guessing everything you say, rereading every text before hitting send, or obsessing over how others will interpret your words. At its core, self-distrust is a form of self-abandonment. You begin to outsource your inner compass to other people's opinions, hoping they'll validate what you already feel deep down. And when they don't, or when their input conflicts, you spiral further into confusion. This cycle leaves you feeling powerless and disconnected from your own wisdom. This lack of self-trust rarely comes out of nowhere. Often it has roots in past experiences that taught you your instincts couldn't be trusted. Maybe you were gaslit by someone who twisted your reality until you stopped believing your own eyes and feelings. Maybe you grew up in an environment where your choices were constantly criticized or overruled, where love was conditional on getting things right. Or maybe you were raised with perfectionist expectations, where mistakes weren't seen as growth, but as proof that you were flawed. Over time, your inner voice went quiet, not because it disappeared, but because you learned to fear its consequences. You began to associate trusting yourself with danger, disappointment, or rejection. But the truth is, you can't live a free and fulfilling life while constantly asking the world for permission. Rebuilding self-trust isn't about becoming perfect or always knowing the right answer. It's about creating a relationship with yourself that says, even if I mess up, I've got me. It starts with small acts of consistency, doing what you say you'll do, even when no one else is watching. That might mean keeping a promise to go for a walk, writing for 10 minutes a day, or saying no when something doesn't feel aligned. Every time you follow through, you signal to yourself, I am reliable. I can be counted on. Another key part of self-trust is learning to tolerate the discomfort of not being validated. That means making a choice and sitting with the unease of not knowing how it will be received. It means recognizing that the approval you're seeking from others is often a reflection of the validation you're withholding from yourself. Start asking, what do I feel is right here? And then actually listening, even if your voice is shaky. You build inner clarity by practicing it, not by waiting for certainty to strike. It also helps to create moments of stillness, journaling, quiet reflection, or mindful walks where you're not flooded with outside noise. In that space, your voice becomes easier to hear. It may not always be loud, but it will be honest. And the more you practice listening to yourself, the more you'll realize you were never as lost as you thought. You just needed to remember that your voice matters, that your instincts are sacred, that your path doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to be yours. Reclaiming your self-trust isn't a single breakthrough. It's a series of small, courageous choices that say, I choose me, even when it's hard. That's how you turn down the toxicity and turn up your power. Number 7, you reject your own growth. Perhaps the most heartbreaking sign that you're being toxic to yourself is when you begin to reject your own growth. It doesn't always look dramatic. Sometimes it's subtle, like brushing off compliments, minimizing your achievements, or saying it was nothing when you've actually worked hard for something. It's deflecting praise because part of you feels like you don't deserve it. Or worse, that if you accept it, people will expect more from you, and you're afraid you won't be able to deliver. It's passing up opportunities that excite you because you're afraid of being seen, of being too much, or of outgrowing the version of you that people are comfortable with. You shrink, not because you're small, but because expansion feels unfamiliar, even unsafe. You fear the consequences of shining too brightly, so you dim the light yourself. This is what self-betrayal often looks like. Not honoring the parts of you that are ready to evolve. The part of you that wants more, that dreams bigger, that's ready to break generational patterns, create new standards, and leave behind the people-pleasing, perfection-chasing, survival mode version of yourself. But growth doesn't always feel like empowerment at first. Sometimes it feels like guilt, like betrayal, like loneliness. Because when you start to grow, you may no longer fit the environments that shaped you. You might feel like an imposter, like you don't belong in the rooms you've worked to enter. This is imposter syndrome at its root, a deep subconscious belief that you're still the old version of yourself, unworthy of the new life trying to unfold. And so you pull back, you play small, you self-sabotage, just enough to stay familiar. But here's the hard truth. If you keep shrinking yourself to fit your past, you'll never step into your future. Growth isn't betrayal. It's the most radical act of self-love. Choosing to stop rejecting your own expansion means letting go of the need for external permission. It means celebrating yourself out loud, even if others don't clap. It means owning your voice, your talents, your desires, without guilt, apology, or fear. You weren't meant to stay the same. Evolution is your birthright, and while it may cost you comfort, it will give you something far more valuable: alignment. So ask yourself honestly, what are you shrinking yourself for? Whose comfort are you prioritizing over your own becoming? Are you clinging to old stories about who you're supposed to be, just to keep others comfortable? Or are you ready to become who you truly are? The world doesn't need a dimmed-down version of you. It needs your full expression, your unapologetic truth, your wild and worthy becoming. The more you embrace your growth, the more you give others permission to do the same. And when that fear of being too much rises up, remind yourself, you were never too much. You were simply never meant to be small. Conclusion, at the end. As we wrap up, it's important to recognize the core truth. The hardest person to heal from is often ourselves. The wounds we carry aren't just from the outside world. They come from the ways we've learned to treat ourselves. The patterns of self-doubt, self-neglect, and self-sabotage may have been ingrained over time, but they are not permanent. You have the power to choose differently. Healing is not about becoming someone else, but about rediscovering the person you've always been beneath the layers of fear, shame, and old conditioning. It's about showing up for yourself with the same compassion, patience, and love you would offer someone you deeply care about. It's about recognizing that you are not your past actions or limiting beliefs. You are who you choose to become next. Take a moment now to reflect. Grab a journal and ask yourself, in what ways am I toxic to myself? And what is one small way I can start showing up differently? It doesn't have to be a grand shift. Small changes, like beginning to trust yourself more, setting a boundary, or acknowledging your growth, can create profound ripples. Remember, healing isn't linear, and it doesn't happen overnight. But every conscious choice you make to show up for yourself is a step forward. The journey towards self-love and self-compassion begins with the decision to stop harming yourself and to start healing. You are not your pattern. You are not defined by the mistakes, the doubts, or the fears that have kept you stuck. You are the person you choose to become next, the one who embraces growth, trust, and the possibility of an entirely new way of being. So let today be the first day of your new chapter, where you choose to heal the parts of you that need love and honor the parts that are ready to soar. The power to transform is already within you.